So here in today's topic, we are going to discuss about the electrolyte imbalance. And this electrolyte imbalance, first we are going to discuss about what are these electrolytes and what happens if there is any imbalance in the electrolytes in the body. Right? So first we have to know what are the electrolytes. So the electrolytes are nothing but these are the fluids and the electrolyte balance. It is a dynamic process. Dynamic process in the sense it will be changing. For every time it will be changing. So that we call it as a dynamic process. And this fluid and electrolyte balance, it plays an important role in the homeostasis, in maintaining the homeostasis of a body. You know what is a homeostasis, isn't it? So maintaining the functioning of the body, particularly it is called as a homeostasis. So the imbalance may result from many factors and it is associated with the illness. So why this electrolyte imbalance happens? Because if there is any illness in the body, then the electrolyte imbalance may happen. So first, in order to know about this electrolyte imbalance in the body, first we should know what are the fluid composition of the body fluids. So definitely the composition of the body fluids will be varying from male to the female. The composition will be different in the male and the composition will be different in the female. Okay. So first let us see what is the composition in a healthy adult male who is weighing about 70 kgs, right? So the total volume is 42 liters. The total, see, you know that a human body is made up of 70% of water and 30% of other constituents. Okay. So in that 70% of the water, that means it is 42 liters. So that is 60% of the body weight is of water, total volume, and it is divided into intracellular and extracellular fluids. So intracellular is nothing but the fluids that are present within the cells, and extracellular which is present outside the cells. So nearly 28 liters is composed of intracellular fluids and 14 liters is composed of extracellular fluids. And extracellular fluid is further divided into intravascular fluid, that means the fluid which is present within the blood vessels, nothing but your plasma, and extravascular fluid. So plasma would be around 3 liters and extravascular would be around 11 liters. And extravascular fluid is again divided into interstitial fluid and transcellular fluid, which is of about 10.5 liters and 0.5 liters respectively. So this complete composition is about the composition of fluid compartments, body fluid compartments in a healthy male. When it is coming to the adult woman who is of weighing 55 kg. So this is the average weight of a healthy adult woman who is present. Okay. So their total body weight, when you compare the volumes between this male and female, definitely there will be a difference. The fluid will be somewhat less in female when compared to that of the male. So again the same, total volume is again divided into intracellular fluid, extracellular fluid, intravascular fluid and extravascular fluid, interstitial fluid, as well as a transcellular fluid. So like this we have different types of the composition or different types of the fluids that are present in the body. Okay. So next, what are the electrolytes? So before going to know what happens if electrolyte imbalance is happening, then first we should know what are the electrolytes. So electrolytes are nothing but the minerals that are present in our body which have the electric charge. That means either positive charge will be there or negative charge will be there. So these electrolytes are nothing but the minerals, but those minerals carry the charge with them, either the positive charge or the negative charge. So they are present in blood, urine, tissues and other body fluids. So these electrolytes are present in all these compartments like blood, urine, tissues and other body fluids. These electrolytes are going to be present. So why these electrolytes are important? What are the functions of these electrolytes? So these electrolytes functions are mentioned here. The first one is it is going to balance the amount of water in your body. So if the water is not maintained properly, either you are going to get dehydrated or you will be getting like excess fluid which results in the edema of the body. So there should be proper regulation, proper maintenance of the water inside the body. And the second one is balance your body's acid base level. Okay, so why this acid base level have to be maintained? Because already you would have studied in your pharmaceutics what is the hypertonic, what is isotonic. We'll see in the next slide that one also. Okay, so the tonicity of the body has to be maintained properly. The tonicity has to be maintained properly. So that tonicity, if the tonicity has to be maintained, the pH has to be maintained. So there we are going to balance the body's acid or basic level. And then move nutrients into the cells, because the cells need the food, they need the energy, isn't it? So for the movement of the nutrients into the cells, these electrolytes are important. And move waste outside the cells. That means once the cells have taken the food, it has to discard all the waste products that are present in the cells. So those waste products can also be taken out from the cells with the help of these electrolytes. And make sure that your nerves, muscles, heart and the brain work the way they should. That means all these organs, all these vital organs inside the body, they should have their proper function and they should maintain their proper function within the body. So these are the various functions of these electrolytes, or to maintain these functions inside the body, the electrolytes are important. So we have cationic electrolytes and the anionic electrolytes. So the cationic electrolytes are nothing but the one having the positive charge, and the anionic electrolytes are nothing but the one having the negative charge. So under cations we have sodium, potassium, magnesium and hydrogen ions. So if you see, they have all the positive charge, that is why they are called as the cations. And then they have chloride, bicarbonate, phosphate and sulfate. So these are all called anions because they are carrying the negative charge. So these are the electrolytes that are present in the body. Next, going to the next slide. Here we are going to see how the body fluids are going to be regulated inside the body. Okay, so how the body fluids are getting regulated inside the body, in the sense here we have various functions like osmosis and the tonicity of the body, diffusion as well as a filtration we have here. So osmosis is nothing but movement of the material from lower concentration to the higher concentration, we call it as a osmosis. So through a semi-permeable membrane, if the movement is from lower concentration to the higher concentration till it attains equilibrium, then we call it as a osmosis. And then here I suggest about the tonicity of the body. So here you can take, you have three conditions where it is hypertonic, isotonic and hypotonic. First, let me discuss about the isotonic. Then you can have the two extremities, hyper and hypo. So isotonic is nothing but the influx of the electrolytes and efflux of the electrolytes is balanced, or the pH is balanced. Inside the cell and outside the cell, the pH is same. So they are called as a isotonic. So they are called as a, they have good tonicity balance. Whereas hypertonic is nothing but, here the hypertonic is nothing but inside the cell the tonicity is more, whereas outside the cell the tonicity is less. So all the fluids that are present outside that are present inside are going out. So here you can see the direction of the arrow. They are going outside the cell. So when all the fluids from the cell, they are going out the cell, what is happening? It is going to shrink. The cell is going to shrink. So here you can see how the cell is getting shrink. Okay. So the opposite is the hypotonic. When the inside the cell the pH is less, from outside, that is from higher concentration to the lower concentration, the fluids are going to move. So when the fluids are moving from outside to the inside, the cell is going to bulge. Okay, the cell is going to bulge. That means it is going to expand. So if it is hypertonic, the cell is going to shrink, and if it is hypotonic, the cell is going to bulge. So that is why the tonicity have to be maintained. If there is a balance between the influx and efflux, then there is no problem. There is a balance. Diffusion. So what we have seen is a diffusion is opposite to the osmosis. Movement from higher concentration to the lower concentration is called as a diffusion. And filtration here is nothing but whatever the electrolytes that are required, or whatever the things or substances that are required for the body, they will only be allowed into the body. Others will be restricted on the other side of the membrane. That is called as a filtration. So by all these mechanisms, the body fluids inside the body, inside the compartments of the body, will be regulated. And then how these gain and loss of the electrolytes will happen. It will happen through these organs. Okay, either the gain or loss of the electrons will happen through these organs. So kidneys, skin, GI tract, and then lungs. Okay, by using all these organs, it will be balancing. That means whether it is coming inside, whether the electrolytes are coming inside or going out of the body, it will be happening through these organs. So when there is a fluid volume disturbance inside the body, there will be two conditions happening. The first condition is a hypovolemia and the second condition is a hypervolemia. So if there is a less number of the fluids, a less amount of the fluid, then we call it as a hypo reduction. Okay. So if there is excess of the fluid, we call it as a hyper, that is excess. So if the fluid volume deficit is there, we call it as a hypovolemia, and if fluid volume excess is there, then we call it as a hypervolemia. Okay, so these are the two conditions where there is a fluid volume disturbance inside the body, right? So you have to remember what is hypo and what is hyper. So hypo is nothing but when there is a fluid volume deficit, and if it is excess, then it is called as a hypervolemia. And we'll see what are the terms that are used to describe the electrolyte imbalances. So the three major electrolytes that are present are the sodium, potassium, and calcium. So these are the three major electrolytes that are present in the body. So what we call, if there is a deficit and if there is an excess. So if there is a deficit of sodium, we call it as a hyponatremia, and if it is excess, we call it as a hypernatremia. So the natremia is the word that is used for the sodium. If it is less, we are prefixing it with hypo, and if it is more, we are prefixing it with hyper. And potassium, we call it as a kalemia. Potassiumia, we don't call it as, okay, we call it as a kalemia, right? So the deficit is hypokalemia and the excess is called as a hyperkalemia. And calcium, calcemia, we call it as, so deficit, we call it as a hypocalcemia, and excess, we call it as a hypercalcemia, right? So these are the normal terms which we use to describe the major electrolyte imbalances inside the body. Now, the most important topic in this electrolyte imbalances we have to discuss is the metabolic acidosis and metabolic alkalosis. So seeing the terms itself, you can understand acidosis in the sense the body pH is becoming acidic, and alkalosis is nothing but the body's pH is becoming alkaline. Okay, so if this acidosis and alkalosis is associated because of the disturbances in the metabolism. Okay, if this acidosis and alkalosis is associated with the disturbances in the metabolism, then we call them as a metabolic acidosis and metabolic alkalosis. Right? So let us see what is metabolic acidosis. A fall in the blood pH due to metabolic component is brought about by fall in bicarbonate level. Okay, so fall in bicarbonate level and excess of hydronium ions in the blood. So if there is a fall in the bicarbonate level, because bicarbonate is suitable, is applicable for the alkaline nature of the body. So if the bicarbonate level is falling down and if there is excess of the hydrogen ions in the blood, then the blood pH is falling down. Blood pH is falling down in the sense it is becoming acidic. Say this is a pH scale where here it is the 7, that is neutral. So from 7 to 0 below, it is called as a acidic, and from 7 to above, that is 7 to 14, it is called as a basic. Acidic and basic. Okay, so a fall in the blood pH, fall in the blood pH in the sense it is reducing below 7, it is falling below 7, so it is becoming acidic. So when it is becoming acidic, if there is fall in the bicarbonate level or increase in the hydrogen ions level, then the pH is going to fall. That means it is going to become, the pH of the blood is going to become the acidic. So in which situations does the blood pH become acidic? Production of large amounts of lactic acid, example in vigorous exercise shock. So when there is a excess release of the lactic acid inside the body, then it leads to the acidosis of the blood. And then uncontrolled diabetes mellitus, which we call it as a diabetic ketoacidosis. Okay, the diabetic ketoacidosis also, it is responsible for the metabolic acidosis. Next, starvation. Okay, starvation, when you just keep on starve your body for more days, then there is a problem of metabolic acidosis. That means the blood pH will be increased, like falling down. Okay, and then chronic renal failure, when there is a long-term renal failure in a person, then also it leads to the metabolic acidosis. And then therapeutic administration of ammonium chloride or acetozolamide. Okay, when these types of the drugs are taken, it is going to reduce the pH, leading to the metabolic acidosis. Okay, so metabolic acidosis is nothing but reducing the fall in the blood pH because of decrease in the bicarbonate level and increase in the hydrogen ion concentration. Now we'll see what is metabolic alkalosis. So opposite to that of the acidosis is the alkalosis. So what do you mean by alkalosis? The rise in the blood pH. Why there is a rise in the blood pH? Because there is a rise in the bicarbonate levels of the plasma and loss of hydrogen ions, the opposite to that of the acidosis. So here the bicarbonate levels are increasing and hydrogen ions concentration is decreasing, and the blood level of bicarbonate is elevated. And in these following situations it is seen. What are those situations? Severe and prolonged vomiting. Okay, when there is a continuous and prolonged vomiting, that is the frequency as well as the number of the days that the vomiting is happening is also increased. Administration of alkaline salts like sodium bicarbonate also increases the pH. Hypokalemia. Okay, hypokalemia in the sense reduction in the amount of the, that is a deficit in the potassium, such as Cushing's syndrome and increased secretion of aldosterone. These cases, they are going to increase the pH of the blood. That means the blood pH is going to become alkaline, which we call it as a metabolic alkalosis. So clinically, metabolic alkalosis is characterized by depression of respiration. That means the patient cannot respire, cannot breathe. Depressed renal function, that means the renal functioning is going to be dropped in renal function with uremia and increased bicarbonate excretion in the urine. So uric acid as well as the bicarbonate excretion will be excess in the urine. So this is called as a metabolic alkalosis. So in this electrolyte imbalance, we had discussed about like what are the electrolytes and what happens if there is a imbalance in the electrolytes, and what are the major electrolytes that are present, and these two are the important topics in the electrolyte imbalance, that is metabolic alkalosis and metabolic acidosis. Okay, next, a very small topic that we have, it is a cell death. So cell death, here we are going to find the difference between necrosis and apoptosis, because both necrosis and apoptosis both are called as a cell death. Okay, both are called as a cell death. But what is the difference between a necrosis and apoptosis? So here necrosis and apoptosis is nothing but you can easily find the differences. Necrosis is a accident that is happening. Okay, necrosis is a accident that is happening, whereas apoptosis is a suicide. Okay, so accident, we doesn't know when it happens. So accident is a necrosis. Suicide, intentionally a person is trying to kill himself or herself. It is called as a suicide, and which we can relate it to the apoptosis. So let us see in detail about these two. So first, let us see what is the cell death. So initially, when we have discussed in the introduction classes of the cell injuries, we have seen reversible cell injury and irreversible cell injury. Okay, reversible cell injury, it is again going back to the normal after cellular adaptations or so. Okay, it is going back after repairing, it is going back to its normal functioning. However, if the cell is leading, if the cell injury is leading to the irreversible cell injury, that means it cannot be repaired back to the normal functioning, then that irreversible cell injury is going to cause a cell death, and that cell death could be of either necrosis or the apoptosis. So here you can see it. The normal cell, that is which is maintaining the homeostasis, it can undergo adaptation. So this is the first change. Okay, and it may undergo the cell injury, and the cell injury is of reversible cell injury and irreversible cell injury. So if the cell is undergoing any stress, it is leading to the adaptation. If the cell is not able to adapt, okay, if the cell is not able to adapt, it is going to the cell injury. And from normal cell also, if there is any injurious stimuli, they can go for the cell injury. It may cause the cell injury. So if the cell injury is mild and transient, it leads to the reversible cell injury, and which again after repairing that one, okay, after repairing that injury, it can turn back to the normal cell and the functioning of the cell will be normal there. If it is severe and progressive, that means if it is still getting worse day by day, then it leads to the reversible cell injury, and that irreversible cell injury, and that may lead to either necrosis or the apoptosis. Okay, now we'll see the difference between this necrosis and see about the apoptosis. So apoptosis in general, we can call it as a cell death, that is suicidal cell death. So in contrast to the necrosis, when cells, DNA or proteins are damaged beyond repair, that means the DNA and the proteins are not able to be repaired. They are not repairable. Okay. The damage has happened in such a way that we cannot repair them. The cell kills itself by apoptosis, a form of cell death that is characterized by nuclear dissolution. That means it is going to dissolve the nucleus first. Fragmentation of the cell without complete loss of membrane integrity and rapid removal of the cellular debris. Okay, so here if you can see, it is going to dissolve the nucleus. This is a nucleus that is present. By the time it is coming to the next stage, it is dissolving the nucleus, and small pieces, it is going to dissolve into the small pieces, and here you see they are called as the apoptotic bodies. Okay, so all these bodies are coming out because it is just slowly degenerating. It is killing itself because it is not able to repair the DNA as well as the proteins that are present inside the body. Because cellular contents do not leak out, unlike in necrosis, there is no inflammation reaction. So this is the main difference between the necrosis and the apoptosis. In the necrosis, as the intracellular fluid is leaking out into the extracellular fluid, there will be bulging in the body, which we call it as an inflammation. But here, it is not rupturing and it is not sending any fluid outside the cell. So there won't be any inflammation in the body. Mechanistically, apoptosis is known as a highly regulated process driven by a series of genetic pathways. Okay, and it is also sometimes called as a programmed cell death. Okay, already how the death has to be happened, it has been decided. That is why we call it as a programmed cell death. Okay, so this is a information about the cell death, why the cell death is happening. Because of irreversible cell injury, the cell death is happening, and that cell death can be of either necrosis or apoptosis. Necrosis is nothing but if accidental cell death happens, it is called as a necrosis. If it is a programmed one, and if it is causing only because of the cell's own intention, it is called as a apoptosis. Okay, so this is all about today's class about the electrolyte imbalance as well as a cell death. Okay, thank you.